I reckon I overdid it in 2022. I finally decided to try out Afterpay as well as PayPal's own version, and no, I didn't actually use it all that often. The only reason I even looked into those things is because one was an item I could not pass up, a pre-order that will hopefully arrive in the next few months, and the other was linked to a eBay promotional discount code. I've often joked that therapy is cheaper than toy collecting, but not actually joking. My 2022 was actually pretty good, but it was bookended by shite. Setting aside that we've had a rough few weeks around here transitioning into the new year, my end of year list videos usually happen a few weeks into January anyway, because I'm still collecting and bargain hunting right up until the final day of the year. This covers stuff I bought for myself in those 12 months, toys and certain collectibles that I've added to my personal collection. No statues or movie posters and similar memorabilia, even though that has become a big part of my collecting. Another reminder, I tend to go with favourite and frustrating instead of the algorithm-friendly best and worst, because this isn't just about whether or not a toy is good or bad. I also talk about the experience surrounding the toy, because I don't think a hobby like this should ever be a struggle. The favourites list is always massive, and it can take a while to whittle down to 5. By comparison, the frustrating list was tiny, yet in its own way, I found it challenging to fill out those separate 5 spots, because this time around, most of those felt like dishonourable mentions and not quite worth the mini essays. Having said that, oh, have I got some word spews for you, and I'm not proud of it. The Mandalorian Nerf Ambient Phase Pulse Blaster by Hasbro. I picked this up at one of the many toy sales in 2022 for nearly 30% off, I think. However, what I want to talk about here is the bewildering full retail price. In terms of Nerf blasters, it's actually kinda cool, even better if you're a Mando fan. Yeah, it's only a single shot and it's bright orange, but when it comes to fake guns, I completely understand and support the reasoning for the colour scheme. If you want something more accurate, obviously you can paint it yourself. But as competent as this is, I struggle to see how this is a $79 toy, let alone a $109 toy. Speaking of seeing, I can't see shit through this scope because it's rubbish. This blaster is not as substantial or as complex as many other cheaper Nerf blasters. You might even assume that a lot of the cost goes into licensing with Lucasfilm and Disney. At the same time, when you look at something more robust with more moving parts like the motorized assault rifle from Halo, then maybe it kind of shits on that licensing theory. According to some reviews online, this appears to be the same build quality as the more expensive white version of the rifle. A lot of the molds were reused between the two, and I really don't mind that sort of efficiency, and I think it's cool that there is a cheaper version for fans, younger fans, and cosplayers to have access to. But then you analyse the actual differences between the two, the gold decals, the foam prongs versus rigid ones, and the electronics in the pricier version, it becomes even more frustrating to know that the white one is twice the price of this one for very minimal reasons. I guess because they can't do an accurate replica, they needed something to fill in the Black Series spot. It just ends up looking like price gouging because Star Wars, which you can actually notice across a lot of the Black Series stuff at the moment. The last 12 months or so has seen their replicas inflate in price, and there are single action figures going for twice what they should at retail just because they spaced out the accessories and the packaging to make it look like you're getting more. That's the feeling I get with this. You're paying too much for what it ultimately offers. Adequacy. Various Transformers from Legacy, Buzzworthy, and 86 Studio Series by Hasbro. It wouldn't be Hasbro if they didn't reuse and repackage popular characters to make different characters or entice fans to double dip. The 86 Studio Series Coronation Starscream may only be a slight improvement over the Earthrise release with some cool additions, but it's basically Malibu Stacy with a new hat. And I don't care. Part of this is because I got this at a pretty decent price, but mainly because as far as minor improvements and inclusions go, these actually make all the difference. The slightly imperfect and overpriced 86 Studio Series Ironhide is more than a simple remold of the exclusive Earthrise version. It's a far superior reworking that also does away with the major issue I have with exorbitantly priced exclusives, by being readily available at regular retail, and it also implies that we have an equally accessible and good Ratchet on the way. Repaints and remolds are par for the course, and as much as I roll my eyes at them, this Legacy Alpha Trion and Orion packs are actually one of the better examples of that practice. Reusing the Scourge mold for the base of Alpha Trion and doing same with Cup's design for Orion packs, the simple straightforwardness of these figures makes them the best versions I've seen of these characters. Admittedly, there haven't been many of them, but still. This blaster was originally released as part of the War for Cybertron Kingdom range, but I don't recall my part of the country ever getting that one in, so this is the Legacy re-release, and is a really cool little robot. Buzzworthy Cup is a simple screen-accurate repaint, but makes for a vast improvement over the 86 Studio Series that I claimed as my most frustrating for that year. The only one in this lot that isn't a remold, reuse, or a repack, at least not in the same manner as these other ones, is Legacy Transmetal 2 Megatron. And I bloody love it. I mean, what's not to love about a robot dragon? Now, to clarify, this is a from-the-ground-up reworking of the toy they made back in 1999 to fit the current era of toys. My only nitpick is they missed an opportunity to try and make this look all shiny and chrome like the old toy, but that's barely an issue. The re-engineering of this really makes it a fun toy to play with and transform. Although it is curious, possibly ironic, they skipped over the more popular Transmetal 1 version of Megsy instead of finishing out the original run of Beast Wars characters and going in order. I suspect they're gonna reuse this for the RID Cryotech release at some point. It's taken a while, but I think I may have finally gotten that monkey off my back when it comes to toy anxiety and the fear of missing out. Sort of. I mean, at the very least, the monkey is now behaving itself. I'm not quite struggling to find these toys like I used to. While we're at it, shout out to JB Hi-Fi, who really have upped their game when it comes to toys and collectibles. They've brought in gear that other local retailers still haven't caught up with yet, and they're doing it at fairly reasonable prices, or at least cheaper than EB Games and Zing, who seem to have lost their way as of late. It's become more fun and less of a chore to collect and slowly inch my way to completing my 86 movie cast, as well as my updated Beast Wars collection. Halo Infinite Master Chief Deluxe 1-to-1 helmet replica by Jazzwares. This is the Halo Infinite Master Chief Deluxe helmet. It's 1-to-1 scale and features working lights and sounds. It retailed exclusively at EB Games here in Australia for about $240 and came in a black box. This is also the Halo Infinite Master Chief Deluxe helmet. It too is 1-to-1 scale and features working lights. It retailed for $99 at Big W and came in this green box. I'd previously commended Jazzwares not only for the quality and price point of most of their Halo range, but also for clearly identifying and labelling the different scales of releases. Referring to both versions of Chief's helmet as deluxe is quite the strange cock-up. Look, there are differences between the two releases that should have clarified things. First of all, while EB did have these pop up in their stores, Big W didn't. They did online only. A lot of places selling this version were online only. In Big W's case, their website only showed photos of the helmet itself, not the box. Otherwise, it might have been a handy clue. But even then, when you look at other online retailers, some of them would show the black box, if they showed the box at all. While doing some research, I discovered a few different forums where a lot of people shared in my confusion. One person even pointed out that one major retailer who was selling the standard version, this version here, had used the description from the exclusive version. The marketing copy is almost identical to one another, except for one tiny detail, which is easy to miss. So you can't even trust the product description on the website to be accurate either, especially if it's just copy-pasted by someone who isn't being paid enough to double check. The helmets are seemingly identical, so what is the defining difference between the two deluxe helmets that warrants a price gap of about $140? A sound chip. A sound chip featuring sound effects from the game, as well as voice clips of Master Chief. And that's pretty much it. Like the Mando rifle, licensing might have been a factor, but this one difference feels much more egregious and even more like price gouging. Which is a shame because looking at the helmet itself as it is, this could easily have made it to the favourites list because I think it's great considering the price point of this version. This is definitely no Marvel Legends or Black Series replica. For one thing, it actually fits my massive head, but in terms of build quality, it's good, although it's made of the same plastic as their much cheaper masks, also made by Jazzwares, and that includes the quality of the visor, so it in turn feels comparatively cheaper as well. But like I said, the $99 price point makes it more appealing. One might point out that's the reason both versions of the proper helmet are called deluxe, because the clarification is between the helmet and the mask. But listen to that again. Helmet and mask. That should be the clarification. While I would have liked the version with the sound chip, do I need it? Not really. I've met the voice actors of both Master Chief and Cortana, and I have this photo shoot to remember them by, so I'm good in that regard. But honestly, the simple act of correct labeling could have prevented so much confusion. Various Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figures from the cartoon, 90s movies, and the original Mirage comics by NECA Toys. Another grouping of toys, even though some of these could easily be honourable mentions on their own because there's not much new to say about them that I haven't already lovingly said about NECA Toys before. It's just easier to lump them together. For instance, these 2-packs are fairly esoteric. The April and Casey are just updates of their Ultimate figures, but this time as they appeared hiding out on the farm. Mind you, April does feature improved knee joints, thanks to the feedback or the complaints about the previous release. Splinter's origin story flashbacks are brief, yet NECA still decided to make Hamato Yoshi and young Oroku Saki figures, and not only that, they included a pre-mutated Splinter too, and I just think these are really cool. What could easily have been another Malibu Stacy with new hat is the Shredder, as he appeared in the movie sequel Secret of the Ooze. I mean, the actual movie costumes themselves were basically a palette swap, but there's enough here to justify getting this new version, and he looks awesome, flanked by Tokka and Raza. Also, 50% off at the Black Friday sales too, so... While I don't dislike the character, I don't really click with Casey Jones in most incarnations of the Ninja Turtles. For what it's worth, I sort of prefer the 2003 version, even though they dropped one of the potentially interesting plots from the original comics. But I got this figure based on the Mirage Comics design because it too was going for half price at the Black Friday sales, and I'd be kicking myself for not completing the family unit, for a lack of a better term. Besides, this is the first time NECA have gone back and made more figures from the comics, which I think fans have been begging for since 2008, when they first released the Eastman and Laird Turtles. While we're talking about the original comic book designs, the first figure that I really wanted to properly praise and highlight is this Utrom. These massive brain-shaped aliens in cybernetic bodies were the inspiration for Krang in the 80s cartoon series, but these guys weren't villains. They were simply trapped on Earth and were accidentally, in a roundabout way, responsible for the creation of the turtles. I've always loved this design, and to see it realised in this manner is fantastic, with wonderful detail that's brought out by the cell shading and line work to emulate how they looked in the colorized, republished version of the comics. I do have the 2000s version that I also think is cool, but it doesn't quite come close to this original Eastman and Laird design. I just wish I had the forethought to buy more and army build these fellas, because this was also from the Black Friday sales. Before now, I've mainly been focused on the 90s movie figures. As sentimental as I can be about the 80s cartoon, because that's how I discovered Ninja Turtles, I'm not as attached to it like so many others my age who grew up in the 80s. I've got somewhat of a hierarchy in how I invest my time and money and energy and money. And NECA's cartoon releases are at the bottom of the list. That all changed with a particular pre-order that I could not let go by. More on that when it finally arrives, but said pre-order will require passengers, and I'd already missed out on the first couple of Toon releases, which now go for way too much online. Although I did pick up this Leo on his own at one of the toy fairs. Funnily enough, it all worked out because I got my hands on this rather awesome Turtles in Disguise set from an interstate seller for, dare I say it, aftermarket price. A good aftermarket price, but I also had an eBay discount code which really helped. This is a much better update to NECA's first go at them. The disguises are actually my least favourite gimmick, but they're a nice bonus. What I appreciate is the engineering behind these, which is based on the larger quarter scale figures. Not only are these head sculpts more cartoon accurate and endearing, they're modular and have this nifty little innovation that lets you swap around the parts to create different expressions. It's really quite clever. Also, they're in this shade of green I prefer, and not that radioactive marketing material green of some of the other variants. NECA do great work. I rarely have any significant problems when it comes to their quality. It's the stuff surrounding their toys that I may struggle and take issue with. But for now, these make great additions to my ever-growing Retro Turtles collection. Arkham City Solomon Grundy Build-A-Figure by McFarlane Toys. I did a video unboxing these, and having thought about it a bit more, I have to temper my final opinion that I expressed in that video. I still like the main figures in this set. They range from great to just fine, but I didn't really pay a lot for them, so I'm not that put out. In that regard, my opinion is mostly unchanged. Yet, despite it only requiring 4 characters to complete and assemble, the Solomon Grundy Build-A-Figure is a bloody disappointment on a few levels. For one, he's not the correct size. In the Arkham City video game, he's meant to be huge, and here he's barely any taller than Ra's al Ghul. This has him at maybe 2/3 the size that he should be, and I think that might have been so he fits in the already spacious and slightly larger than they need to be boxes. He needs to be as big as the Titan Joker or Killer Croc that McFarlane also released, so I'm confused as to why they didn't do that here. The second thing isn't a deal breaker so much as a missed opportunity, especially when there's already a better version done by DC Direct, which is the one I missed out on. In the game, his chest opens up to reveal his heart. He doesn't have that gimmick here. The most frustrating thing though about this guy is that it's so insubstantial and feels kind of cheap. When you compare it to recent era Marvel Legends Build-A-Figures, it lacks the same robustness, and it really feels flimsy next to the massive previous deluxe releases by DC Direct. As much as I admired the level of detail on this bastard, which is pretty much par for the course when it comes to McFarlane toys, that's not really enough to overcome how underwhelming this is, and sort of ruins the achievement of the Build-A-Figure gimmick. One-sixth scale Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil 2 remake by Damn Toys. I'm a relatively new fan to the Resident Evil games, and that's thanks to the recent remakes. Oh sure, I've known about the series for ages, I've even watched those awful movies, but I was never a fan of survival horror games. Then a mate of mine was playing the RE2 remake on his YouTube channel, and it looked like fun. It looked like more my speed, something I could get into. So I picked up a cheap copy, gave it a go, became a convert and sort of fell down the rabbit hole. Of course, when I like something enough, one of my ways of expressing and engaging is to have something toy-like represented in the collection. And there's nothing. There's older stuff from 20 years ago, but those toys tend to go for triple figures now. And I want something directly related to this incarnation. I've got this Leon Kennedy statue from the collector's edition, which I found at a local cash converters for peanuts. And it's nice, but it's still not quite what I'm talking about. Obviously, I'm exaggerating when I say there's nothing, but it's always difficult to call these high-end figures toys in the sense of traditional playthings, especially considering their hefty price tags that aren't conducive to playing with them. Yet I still include them in my list because, in the broad strokes, they do the exact same as actual kids' toys, just at a higher quality and fidelity. It's up to you whether you want to play with it or treat it like a museum piece. They're ostensibly pricey dolls. That's quite the intro just for me to finally say, this is pretty fucking sweet. He looks exactly like the rookie cop from the remake. From the highly detailed uniform with working buckles and Velcro-like patches to that dumb expression and 90s boy band haircut. And the accessories, oh my god, the accessories. I reckon there's enough here to cover 3 of these figures. I haven't done a proper audit, but I think this covers most of the collectibles and weapons you can pick up in the game. There are a few missing that are character specific, but there's so many. I'm almost disappointed they didn't bother to do every collectible item and everything that you could pick up in the game. I was fortunate to win this auction for less than the original retail, as well as far less than aftermarket prices, which is actually how I get most of my high-end figures. But even second-hand ex-display, this is in wonderful condition. The main reason I eventually picked this up was that Damn Toys finally announced they would also be making a matching Claire Redfield, which no one was actually sure about due to the company being silent about it for so long. There was even a third-party version that did the rounds in the meantime. I guess that may have forced their hand, or maybe Damn Toys was secretly testing the waters. Whatever the case, often there's no point in sinking money into something if you end up with an incomplete set. And if I can get this pair as the bare minimum for my Capcom shelf, I'll be very content with that. Lightyear Alpha Class figures by Mattel and Turning Red toys by Just Toys. I originally had something different in this spot, but I struggled to flesh out my frustrations about it. In hindsight, what I've replaced it with may be a more important, or at least a more interesting take, which may have connections to much later. As much as I enjoyed Disney and Pixar's Lightyear, it was very much a film that didn't need to be made, let alone have a theatrical release. In the weeks and months leading up to its release, there was a massive push by Disney to promote the movie. And of course, a big part of that is the merchandise. The toy section was pretty much dominated by Lightyear, with stacks and stacks of figures of different sizes and variations. So many vehicles and costume pieces, everything you pretty much expect for a kids movie. Ignore for the moment the lackluster critical reception. Obviously that doesn't align with what kids like and how they play. It's far more useful to consider how many parents actually took their kids to the cinema in the middle of the pandemic, which is what it is, whether you admit it or not. That may have been a bigger contributor to why these toys are now shelf warmers. I picked up a few items for myself, but the one that made this list is the Buzz and Alicia Hawthorne 2-pack from their Alpha Class range, which is pretty much their version of Marvel Legends or Black Series. I was lucky to get this for about 20% off, and its full retail price is a lot, but you can now get this for nearly half price, and that's how much they haven't shifted. I enjoyed the movie well enough to want a good set of figures to represent it. Unfortunately for the Alpha Class, this is it as far as Australia is concerned. Mattel haven't bothered to ship out the rest of the Lightyear toys, possibly because of the lukewarm response, but the other characters do exist and have been released in the US. I mean, sure, I can order the others online, but I'd be paying much more for them than I should be. We're not talking about high-end collectibles here, so cost and ease of access really do become barriers. On the flip side, we have Disney and Pixar's Turning Red, which I absolutely loved. I don't think I have the words to adequately describe how much I love and relate to this film. This one has stuck with me, and I'll forever be a fan. Also, those Four Town songs are goddamn bangers. Like a handful of other recent Pixar films, Disney opted to release this on Disney Plus, and not in cinemas like they had originally planned. Understandable considering what I said before. Mind you, it's worth pondering, had this not been so easily accessible on streaming, would it have blown up in the same way, especially with the Asian diaspora? Similar problem to before, just a slightly different approach. Apart from maybe a diary that I thought was too pricey and some blind boxes, this is pretty much it when it came to Turning Red toys in Australia. A stark contrast to Lightyear, and especially frustrating because these were only available at one retailer, not even the retailer that supposedly has a deal with the Disney store. To really rub it in, these aren't the only toys they made for the film. While trying to consume as much as I could about this movie, I saw numerous articles covering all the merch that had been released, TikToks of all the gear people were seeing at Disney parks set to Four Town songs, and we barely saw any of it down here. Again, I can buy this stuff online, but again, why am I jumping through extra hoops and paying more for the privilege of access? Like I said, you can't compare critical response to how kids play and react to things, but you can at least acknowledge the way this film exploded online, the number of grown Asians that finally felt seen, that finally felt understood. Part of that revelation is seeing stuff like this around the place. Its presence can do so much to enhance that feeling. And it's not limited to Asian Americans or Asian Canadians, it's Asian Australians too. Besides, if you don't think the kids are going to dig it, you should bloody well know all the Disney adults with disposable income are probably going to devour it anyway. I mean, why the hell are we even here? If you're going to pretend that the world has opened up again and things are back to normal, you can't continue to keep your shit locked up in one region. If you're going to ride the gimmick of diversity and representation, then you damn well better follow through with it. Ghostbusters Vintage 1986 Proton Pack by Kenner Toys. I feel as though I only started collecting Ghostbusters again a few years ago, and if I had to pinpoint when that was, it would have been when I stumbled upon the chassis of the 1986 Ecto-1 at Savers about 6 years ago. I found it in the knick-knack section for $5, and it was in pristine condition, almost like it had never had the stickers applied to it. Soon enough, I found the missing parts in the one go on eBay, found a local who sells replacement decals, and for less than $40, I had a complete vintage Ecto-1. This Proton Pack from the same era had a near identical journey. Funnily enough, I found the main backpack on its own at the exact same Savers store just 3 months prior for only $3, although it would take another 6 years until the thrower or the Neutrona wand popped up on eBay, which I won for cheap, and it was in decent condition considering its age. I decided to attach the two parts with what I could source locally, and ended up using clear vinyl tubing and yellow heat shrink, which I think does the job of recreating the original. I actually found a piece of the original tubing stuck inside the wand so I could compare. I don't think I did too bad a job. It's not complete. There are parts I can track down in my own time. I could even order another set of decals if I wanted to replace these ones, but honestly, I'm rather content with where I am with this. Not only am I highly amused with how this came together, but this is one of those toys I desperately wanted as a kid. And now 30 some odd years later, I finally have it. It's both weird and deeply satisfying. As I said, the frustrating list is always a lot shorter than the favourites, and by end of year, as I sort them out, it keeps getting shorter and shorter based on how I feel. weeks or months later versus how I felt in the immediate moment. Sometimes a nitpick might stay with me long enough to want to point it out. Sometimes a bad experience might have burrowed deep enough under my skin and finally it just needs to be cut out. And then there's the stuff that you just really can't control or have any influence over because it's too big or people are too stupid. Some folks I encounter think themselves entrepreneurs but have the personality of wet cardboard. Prices were going up even before official inflation rates anyway. And of course, corporations are still not your friends. Here are the dishonourable mentions. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mirage Comics Fugitoid and Renette by NECA Toys. I've gone over it before, but us Aussies have our challenges when it comes to accessing certain collectibles. Our Target and Walmart equivalents don't have sections dedicated to the likes of NECA Toys. Instead, it's big brands like Hasbro, Mattel, Lego, and Hasbro. There was a brief period when NECA and McFarlane Toys did share the same shelves at our local Targets. That's how I got a lot of the stuff in the late 2000s. And briefly, not too long ago, Masterpiece Transformers were being sold at Big W. To their credit, they seem to be trying a few things lately. You might assume all that not being the case anymore is a business thing. Probably, but part of me thinks that quite a few Aussie collectors deliberately want the separation of their stuff from the kids' toys. Me, I just want to be able to pop down to my local stores and buy toys when I want. Failing that, I want to be able to order them locally or even interstate. Anyway, when companies like NECA make access to their products as easy as, say, a 2-week-long pre-order period from their website with decent postage to anywhere in the world, that's highly appreciated. And I even highlight this in previous videos and is usually part of the reason for my favourable reviews. But for all the great toys they make and goodwill they've elicited from fans, I was fearful they would find a way to cock it all up. And I've expressed that as well, sending it out into the ether to somehow hopefully be proven wrong. It felt like an aberration, but in hindsight appears to be the start of NECA going back to region or store exclusives, meaning fans and collectors outside the US will likely miss out on certain products. They're not the only company doing this, as so many others are getting complacent again about going back to normal. And look how well that's worked out. But let's be real, nobody particularly important watches my videos, so that kind of felt pointless. With that preamble out of the way, let's begin with the Fugitoid. He was part of NECA's month-long haul-a-thon promotion, or as they called it, a global collector event. It was a way for them to create exposure for the variety of brands and subsidiaries NECA now own. Each week for 4 weeks, they'd announce and make available a range of toys and collectibles for fans to order. Sounds simple enough. The promotion was in conjunction with Target in the US, so collectors over there would make their purchases at Target stores or on the Target website. For us international folks, we had to go to the Haulathon website. The Fugitoid was part of the launch. The launch was an absolute clusterfuck. I despise exclusives at the best of times. I don't care if they're event or store exclusives. They fucking suck. When collectors went to their local Target stores in the US on launch day, many of them missed out on the figure. Some claimed that staff hadn't put out stock yet, being told to return the next day. I think one guy even claimed the manager didn't know what promotion they were talking about. Others claimed they missed out because stock had been put on shelves days before they were meant to. They broke street date, and the scalpers had already picked the place clean. Remember when I said the Yanks were supposed to order from the Target website? Well, that site apparently shit the bed because of the influx of traffic, so a heap of them decided to order from the Haulathon website instead. I was there at launch time and missed out on my figure because they sold out so quickly. It was in my cart and I was about to pay, but it glitched and refreshed and said it was out of stock. Like I said before, NECA were previously doing pre-order periods, but here it was based on allocated stock. Admittedly, I did hesitate with my order because the postage was ludicrously exorbitant for a single toy, especially considering I've ordered single figures from NECA before, as well as far bigger orders from them on their website proper for a lot less international postage. In any case, it was a bloody mess. As an added kick to the nuts, not long after Fugitoid sold out, they decided to upload this to social media.
Hey there everyone, Canuck Curator here, reporting live from my turtle lair. Are you ready for some bodacious deals? Well, you're in luck. The NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line is totally tubular. Look at this Fugitoid, Toka and Razar, Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady. And the glow-in-the-dark Muckman actually comes with ooze.
What's going on down there? What's all the noise?
Ma, I'm doing a live for Haulathon. Anyway, go grab your skateboard, your hoverboard, get in your turtle van and go to Target and Target.com. If you're outside the US, Haulathon.com. Go grab these turtles. They won't last long. Cowabunga, dudes. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power.
This video got ratioed so hard, the backlash so severe, that it was almost instantly removed from Twitter. Probably because some major names in the collector community vocally disapproved. You can still find it around the place, but only because those comment sections can be curated. What's really a shame is that this figure is actually rather good, which I eventually got for 25% off at the Black Friday sales from an American-owned but Aussie-based costume retailer. But that Haulathon bullshit really tainted the experience, one that could have been avoided by either planning better or just letting us know that there would be other avenues to access this. Renette has similar poorly thought out baggage, however the first problem with this figure is that it's the wrong colour. Now granted, the original Ninja Turtles comics were black and white, but the covers weren't, and they clearly established Renette's outfit as blue, which was then confirmed and carried over to the colorized trade paperbacks from the 90s. The red outfit apparently comes from the reprinted issues done by IDW. I'd like to confirm that, but the only images I can find online are the box art for this. Also, that requires more effort than this is worth. But of course, NECA eventually released the correct blue version. We all saw that coming. It was a classic and cynical move that would make even the most lazy of Hasbro executives proud. So if there is a correct version, why do I have this? Fucking NFTs. Or at least the imitation of them. 2022, to everyone's relief, saw the decline of non-fungible tokens as all the idiots with more money than sense found out the hard way what the rest of us already knew. That it's all a scam. But when things are popular and of the moment, enterprising individuals always want in on it or copy it somehow. So, NECA launched something they called Auto T?
Auto T is the next step in the evolution of collecting, featuring limited edition, real-world physical collectibles backed by a secure digital platform. Starting today, you can visit the collectibles section on Walmart.com to purchase Auto T collectibles. Then visit AutoTVault.com to reveal your item and see if you've received one of the rare Chase variants. Everything is digitally authenticated. This patent-pending technology allows users to register, buy, sell, and trade their collectibles with confidence. The physical items live in the NECA Vault for as long as you want. Have them shipped to you to enjoy at any time.
Even if you ignore the part that this was exclusive to Walmart, which apparently didn't matter at the end because people were scanning barcodes from photos online, it's the part where you buy something and they keep it. There is an option to have it sent to you, which is very thoughtful and generous, but there is an option for them to keep it in their vault. The reasoning behind this is the supposed problem we have as collectors with the lack of space, which is such a non-issue when you really think about it. We're talking about a single toy, not the USS Flag. However, they can only keep it in the vault for 2 years, and then after that, you're charged for it. But that's reliant on anyone being stupid enough to do that in the first place. To further round out the aping of NFTs, while they still keep your property that you bought in their vault, you can sell or trade your Auto T figure to anyone else. People sell off their toys all the time, whether it's because they need the money, the space, or simply change their minds. I'm not counting scalpers, they're not people. But at least these transactions usually feature an actual product in hand and not just a code. Of course, this was its own shit show, with NECA cancelling orders because of a lack of stock. Some fans were also unable to get a refund because technically Walmart sold them a code, not an actual product. It's almost as if the shortcomings and consequences of NFTs were being replicated here too. Now on eBay, you can find these blue Renettes for anywhere between $100 to $200 Aussie, and that's before international postage. Even the scalpers weren't bothering with just selling off the digital ownership. In any case, I can't justify those aftermarket prices. I can't justify those prices for anyone that might have the spare cash. I mean, good on you, but at the same time, I'd probably lose all respect for anyone spending that much on a new toy or participating in such a scam. The likelihood that NECA will suddenly release the proper blue one internationally is incredibly low. And even if they do, I doubt it'll be at a reasonable price considering the regular figures are already so inflated now. Resigned to that fact, I decided to settle for this one because it was going for auction at less than retail. About 30% less, I think. Oh, and the cherry on top of this sorry saga is that I won the auction 2 days before the Black Friday sales, which are now weeks long around here, not knowing that the costume retailer I would later buy the other NECA toys from was going to do 50% off. And also, this eBay seller sent this out using Sendle, a shitty courier service that took 3 weeks to make a 1-week interstate delivery. The other NECA stuff took like 4 days. I try my best to resist doing the whole angry internet nerd performative bullshit, but I also know the importance of expressing my frustrations and disappointments in a clear and honest manner. And if you followed my work long enough, you know that honest and authentic expression also includes the numerous times I've been vocal about my joy and adulation for NECA's output. Other companies mess up too. As we speak, Hasbro is in the shit again for standard greedy corporate shtick, which they seem to be getting into like the cycles of the moon. But in 2022, NECA not only dropped the ball, they decided to drop their DAX and take a steaming shit in the middle of the court. These promotions weren't just ill-conceived and poorly executed. They may have killed so much goodwill they've earned since the start of the pandemic. In reality, NECA will easily come back from this, because that's the usual cycle, especially if they continue to make great toys. But they need to allow fans easy and straightforward access to them. you're going to see a few more unopened boxes. Not because I'm a mint in pack kind of collector. It's more a case of I haven't gotten around to making space for it yet. Having said that, some are because I want to keep one in pack and find a loose one later. Besides, most of them come under the category of, this is cool and I got it for cheap. And I kind of do that anyway on my Instagram. Before we get to the top spot, here are the honourable mentions. Pixar Featured Favourites Russell from Up by Mattel. I turned 40 last year. Based on stuff I've said elsewhere, on paper this should not be in the top spot. This isn't available locally, so I had to buy it directly from Mattel's website. That was after it came back in stock. And there doesn't appear to be any other matching characters. The featured favourites seem to be a greatest hit sort of line, with random Pixar characters who are rarely depicted as toys. There is a long sold out Kevin from another line that could match this one, but there's no sign of a matching Doug or a Carl Fredricksen on the way. And yet, I kind of anticipated that. In regards to toys, Pixar's Up is often overlooked. It's to such a point that almost anything Up related is horribly overpriced on eBay the instant it's released. It wasn't until the 10th anniversary that we started seeing stuff pop up again. But even then, aside from a few pop vinyls, so little of that has actually made it to this side of the world. Actually, that's probably it. It's very much a perspective thing when you compare it to the overabundance of gear for the likes of Toy Story, Cars, and Monsters Inc. Having said that, I was able to get this Russell for a fantastic price, and it's a pretty awesome toy to boot. He's larger than I anticipated. I've become so used to small figurines for so many of these more elusive characters, and so I was kind of taken aback. And that of course allows for a little more detail to be shown. Not exactly NECA or McFarlane levels of detail, but as collectible as the featured favourites range is, it's got that Marvel Legends vibe to it. It's from Mattel, so there's a more toyetic balance between fidelity and small choking hazards. As a cosplayer who's pored over every detail of this backpack, I can easily tell you it's missing a few camping accessories, which is understandable as some would be way too small for such a toy. But at the same time, I actually appreciate how much there is here. I think the holy grail of Up toys may be the Hot Toys release from just over a decade ago. Yeah, bloody Hot Toys made of Russell and Carl, the price of which on the aftermarket all these years later makes me want to start drinking again. And while this looks like more than a few steps down, more like a multi-story stairwell away from Hot Toys, it's possibly one of the best goddamn toys I've ever bought. Okay, the hyperbole comes off like I'm severely dehydrated and I've dunked my head in a bucket of water, which is actually an apt metaphor for Up merch in Australia. Setting aside what this character means to me, something I'll unpack another time, and considering what this offers as a toy at this price, it just does it so nicely. Things have been getting better, slowly but surely, but 2023 has already started on a low note, and in terms of spending, it's very much about recovery. I do have a few leftovers from last year, a few pre-orders that are finally on their way and will hopefully be here soon. Hopefully they can tide me over for a while. On that note, if you have ever enjoyed my videos, then please consider contributing to my tip jar at ko-fi.com/oldtrenchy. As well as all the usual like, share, and making sure you've subscribed, because that would really help me out. There's a lot on the way in the coming months, not just with toys, so we'll see how things proceed, but for now, here's hoping for a wonderful 2023. And it was in pristine condition, almost as if